Now Photoshop has gotten into non-destructive editing, and it has the ability to treat images as smart objects. Now a smart object is almost like a link or a placed object. So there's a couple different ways to get a smart object into Photoshop, and one of the ways is to go under File and Place, and let's place some flowers. And again, it gives you your bounding box when you bring it in. I'm just going to hit enter for this example, and right away in your layers panel you can see that there's this little icon down here that says Smart Object Thumbnail. And if you double click that, it'll give you a little dialog box saying, after editing the contents, choose File, Save to commit the changes. Those changes will be reflected upon returning to Fo19, which is the name of this file that I have. So if we hit OK, it brings up the original JPEG. I'm just going to do some adjustments on here, like levels. So I'm going to blow this out some. Just kind of like do that to the image and hit save. Sure, that sounds great. Once that's saving, I'll go into Photoshop, and you can see that my image adjusted based off of the last one. So if I jump back to my flowers and I undo that and I save it and go back, you can see that my flowers have returned to their normal previous state. So that's kind of how smart objects work. They're non-destructive. You have your other file that is represented in your placed file here, and you can edit that separately, and your document, your live document, will automatically be updated. So I'm going to close this here and show you another example of a smart object. So you can do File, Open as Smart Object, and then I'm going to pick my samurai and zoom in here. And you can see again, right away, in the Layers panel, you have your Smart Object thumbnail. Now once you import your image, or place your image, or do a Open as Smart Object, you're going to have to save it. So when you do File, Save, you're going to see that Photoshop is saying Fo19 as Smart Object 1.psb. Now PSB is sort of a large format Photoshop file. It's kind of an Adobe file too, but it also contains data that is just specific to Photoshop. Like, it's not only for large format stuff, it also contains things for smart objects and smart filters and some other things that are specific to Photoshop. So we'll just go ahead and hit save here, and that's fine. And now that we have the document and our image, we can add a mask to this image if we want. And it's treated pretty much just like any other layer in Photoshop, except we can't paint directly on the layer. So if we try to paint here, you'll see that we get a little exclamation popping up saying that the smart object must be rasterized because it's placed. So if we want to actually edit this image, we have to go ahead and edit it, which is in another file and makes a duplicate one. So if we say save as, our original JPEG is there. Now that's a little bit about smart objects, which takes us to smart filters and using filters in Photoshop. Now filters in Photoshop are a way to distort or affect the pixels that are on a layer. Now to get to them, are under Filter, we have our filter gallery, which is probably the main ways to get to all your filters, because a lot of the artistic ones and the brush strokes and the ones you see here, anytime you select these under the filter menu, if we cancel to any of these, it's going to go ahead and open the filter gallery anyway. So anytime you select any one of these, it's going to open the filter gallery. So it's probably best just to go ahead and open the filter gallery, and you can kind of browse through your filters. Now each one of the filters has a bunch of parameters for you to change and tweak and all that stuff. And I'm just kind of clicking through here. And I'm not going to go through each one of these things because I think they're pretty straightforward, and once you get into them and start massaging them, You can sort of figure it out from there. But you have your artistic, and you have your brush strokes and texture and stuff. Now, I know that you see a lot of photo manipulation where they just take a filter and apply it to the whole image, which is not the most ideal way to affect an image if you're going for a certain look. You want to sort of mix and match them and learn how to manage them and control them in different layers and blend them together. And we'll show examples of that later in some of the more advanced things. And that's pretty much it for the filter gallery, pretty straightforward. Now, we're going to talk about smart filters. And smart filters can only be applied to smart objects. Now, since we already changed this image into a smart object, as we see by our icon here in the Layers panel, we can go ahead into our filter gallery. So Filter, Filter Gallery, and it brings up our filters. Now I'm just going to do a cutout on this, just for the sake of example. And I'm not going to spend any time really dialing it in, just for this. Now you can see kind of how this filter works. But again, with the filters, I encourage you just to go in here and sort of play with them, and you'll figure it out from there because it's pretty straightforward. Now, when we applied our filter, or a smart filter, you can see that on the right we have our icon, indicates filter effects, and then our drop down with our smart filters in it. Now we have our filter that's applied, which is Filter Gallery, and within there we have our cutout. And so we can access this at any time through the Layers panel. We could toggle it on and off, you could see. And again, it's non-destructive to the pixels of your layer. And it also has a mask where you can go ahead and with our brush mask out parts of it. It's all live, it's all non-destructive. Now I reverted my file so it's not a smart object anymore, but I want to apply a smart filter. So one way we could do that is to go ahead and do Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. And what that's going to allow us to do is to make our image editable to have a smart filter applied to it. So our dialog pops up and it says, to re-enable smart filters, the selected layer will be converted into a smart object. Now, we went over the process earlier of making a smart object, but we'll do it again here. Hit OK. And in our Layers panel, we have our smart object icon. And it says, after editing the contents, choose File, Save to commit to changes. Those changes will be reflected upon returning to Faux 19 JPEG. So here is our original Faux 19 JPEG. So if we want to edit anything to this image, we go to the Faux 19 JPEG, our Samurai, go ahead and change whatever we want. And then when we bounce back into our image here, it's going to reflect those changes. So we'll have to do Save As, and it's going to save out a Faux 19.psb. And I created one earlier, so I'm just going to save over that one and hit Replace. Now the PSB is containing the Samurai JPEG, or the Faux 19 JPEG. So it's being placed into the PSB, and the PSB is our working file. So now, from here, we could go ahead and apply any of our smart filters, or any of our filters. And again, on the right, they're editable. You could toggle them on and off. You could mask them out. Now, the difference between a smart filter and a regular filter is, as I've mentioned before, the non-destructive nature. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this image, or this layer. I'm going to turn off the smart filter, and I'm also going to rasterize this so it's just like any other layer. It's just all raster, it's all pixels, it's not a smart object. And when you apply a filter to this, you can see that you can't edit it anymore. It's already been affected. Your pixel have been affected, and so it's permanent. So that's the difference between the smart filter and the regular filter. A regular filter is applied to the pixels and is permanent. The smart filter You can open it up, toggle it on and off, go and edit it as you wish, go back out, and your pixels are not destroyed. They're not permanent. It's just an effect applied to that layer. Now the beauty about the smart objects and the smart filter is that your layer is still totally editable like any other Photoshop layer. The only thing you cannot do is paint on it. So if we try to paint on this layer, it's not going to allow us because it needs to be rasterized. Because the pixels on this layer are locked because it's placed in from our other file. So if we want to edit the pixels for this, we have to go into our Pho19 JPEG file, edit it there, and then again it will be reflected here. Now on this layer 2, you can go ahead and create masks and do all the other things that Photoshop can do with a layer. The only thing you cannot do is paint. So that's pretty much it for smart filters.